the Galaxy S25 Ultra is seemingly getting an upgrade, one that we would kind of expect from this phone. Now, the brightness on the Galaxy S24 Ultra is 2600 nits. That's the maximum brightness you will get with this phone, but it's getting even higher on the Galaxy S25 Ultra. The latest information coming out from Crow is that the S25 Ultra is planned to support 3000 nits of brightness. So 400 nit brightness increase. You know, when you think about this, are you gonna really see it that it's like a massive, big increase in terms of brightness and viewing it outdoors? Probably not, let's be honest with it. And the reason for that is 400 nits, even though it's a nice little upgrade, it's not anything I think that's at the end of the day, it's gonna be like, wow, I really notice a huge difference in that. It's changed my life. It's not one of those change your life moments. I think even when you look at it, I think it's gonna be so incremental and minute that it really won't make that big a difference. But again, I will gladly take it. It will obviously help a little bit with outdoor viewing, even though it's only 400 more nits, especially at this range. You know, 400 nits, maybe 1000 to 1400. You might notice a little bit more, or 800 to 1200. But you know, from 2600 to 3000, which is already super bright, again, I don't think you're gonna notice that much of a difference. Next up, as you can see from this headline, Samsung is rumored to bring battery AI to its S25 series, boasting the total backup by up to 10% at the same performance level. So Samsung, when the S25 phones launch, they're due to get a software feature built into there that would be called battery AI. Now they're really going all in with this AI technology, and then you also throw in all the AI stuff we have right now, circle to search, your keyboard stuff, your notes, your recordings, your picture editing, all that stuff, and then add this in and a few other things, and it's gonna look like a nice software upgrade. A lot of this stuff should probably still come to some of the older phones, such as the S24 series. I can't see why it wouldn't, but anything that gives us better battery life, where I don't have to mess with anything. And when I say me, I'm talking about me in general, like the regular person that buys these phones. They don't want to go tinkering into the settings. They want it to just work for them. And if this just does work for people, it's gonna be a nice get overall for the regular consumer. Foldable iPhone to arrive just around the time of the Galaxy Z Fold 8. That's right, there's reportedly a new iPhone that's gonna come out that will be a foldable phone, and it would be out by 2026. Now that's still over 2 years away, or about 2 years away from the launch of this, and then Galaxy Z Fold 8 will be out by then, which who knows what that thing will have and what it will be like. I can't imagine it will look terribly different than the Galaxy Z Fold 6, because at this point in time, Samsung and Apple and most other companies really are keeping the same design for 3 to 5 years before they make any drastic changes. So I would expect that the Z Fold 6 that you see now, the Z Fold 8 will look very similar, just a little bit more refined, maybe a little bit sexier, a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, things like that. But I don't think it's gonna look terribly different than what we get with the Z Fold 6. So at that point, you're thinking, what's the iPhone Fold gonna be? Is it gonna be the same form as a Galaxy Z Fold or a Z Flip? I still think they're gonna end up coming out with like a flip version first and then a fold version. I think it's such a drastic change. I just can't imagine that they're going to come out with that fold phone at that point. Maybe they will. I hope to God they do. I think it would be an amazing thing for competition. I think it would be an amazing thing to see an Apple phone that can do foldable things, and hopefully they update the software and add multitasking in there, unlike they have on their regular iPhones, and just add other features that we're just not thinking of, or that they don't have right now on these phones, and make it and give it maybe some of what they have on the iPad side also mixed with the iPhone. That would be a great little thing to have. And this thing is going to be an absolute massive seller. If it's a fold phone, or even if it's a flip, let's be honest, they're going to take over the market. They will be number one the first year, I have no doubts, in the folding market. It'll go from Samsung having whatever they have percentage-wise, 60, 70, 80% of the market, down to way lower than that. Apple is going to dominate this market when and if they come out with a foldable phone. We've got a massive day for Galaxy Z Fold 6 and what that front display and inside display look like in real life. This is again a big story, and it's going to be something you definitely want to see if you're considering buying or just your interest in the Galaxy Z Fold 6. This information has been leaked out by Ice Universe. So let's first take a look at the front display. So we've heard that it's going to be a more squared off design, and it is. One of the things about this is we also heard it's going to be bigger. So the two things, and both of those are true, squared off and bigger, but honestly, not that much bigger. You can tell that when you look at it, it's 60.2 millimeters wide versus 57.4 millimeters wide on the Fold 5. So it's only about almost 3 millimeters thicker, which is not a huge amount. So it's only 0.118 inches bigger, which is really not a big thing. So I know I was hoping for a much wider display, or at least something that's gonna feel substantial. I don't think this is going to feel like that. It does look like a better design. Like when you look at the bezels on here, on the Fold 5, it just looks like they didn't finish working on it. It's got the weird like rounded edges, and you can see like the black running around it, but then the Fold 6 looks perfect. It looks like they made a symmetrical looking front display. So I'll give it that, but honestly, the front just does not look like a much bigger, what I was hoping, display at all. Here's Ice Universe, or somebody holding the Galaxy Z Fold 6 cover displays, tempered glass, and you can see it does look bigger here, and maybe it will feel a lot bigger in hand when you do it. I wouldn't say it looks like a normal phone, but it almost looks like a normal phone. So in this regard, I'm like, not too bad. Maybe I'm excited about this more than I think. Next up is the inside display. Here's what it will look like, and to me, it looks very similar, really no change versus what we get on the Galaxy Z Fold 5, and I'm pretty much fine with that. The Fold 5 has a really good size inside display. So I'm not too worried about that. It's the outside display I was more concerned with. But this is also, again, looking off like the squared off edges, as you can see, so it makes it look a little bit more symmetrical, a little bit cooler, a little bit sexier, and I'm down with that. Overall, I think it's gonna look like a really great phone. And then here is a look at the phones when they are just the back camera and the front display, like when it's completely open on its back. And again, it looks great. If you looked at it real quick, you probably would just think it was a Fold 5, but if you really hone in on what the differences are, the cameras look pretty much the same, and then the squared off edges on the phone itself are what really set it apart. Man, I was really hoping for something a little bit more impressive on the front display, and it doesn't look like we're getting that on the Fold 6. And it's kind of weird because we've had the same design more or less since the Fold 1, and they haven't really changed it all that much, seemingly, into the Fold 6. Now, I do feel like when we get these phones in hand, I think a lot of us are gonna be like, wow, they really improved. I think it's gonna be one of those types of devices, but on a surface level, picture level, it's kind of not impressive the way it looks. But I think once it gets into hand, it's gonna show a lot more impressiveness and a lot more just usability with it, so that when you do use it, you're gonna be like, wow, this does feel like a slightly different phone in a good way. We've been talking about the Galaxy Z Fold 6. We saw what it's going to look like yesterday with the bigger outside display and a very similar look to the inside display, but overall it's gonna have a squared off design. There's been, good things about this phone. We've heard stuff, and bad things about the phone in terms of things that haven't really been changed all that much. But reportedly, there's 2 new things that are going to be improved with it that should make some people happy. Now, the first one has to do with battery life, which yesterday actually, I released a video talking about a couple of things that I would love to see happen to the phone, and they were very important to me, one of them being battery life. And the latest information coming out, at least from this leak, is from Crow, and Crow is saying that the Galaxy Z Fold 6 is expected to increase the maximum battery life by 2 hours with a change in display material. Now, I'll be honest, I'm I'm hard pressed to think what they mean by that and how a display material could change battery life by 2 hours. I mean, it's still gonna be OLED. It could be anti-reflective, but I don't think that would help with battery life all that much. We've heard about AI battery. If you don't remember, I talked about that a couple days ago on the channel. So I don't know what they mean by this. So take it with a grain of salt, obviously, but it is something that I always want to talk about the good and the bad as we hear it. Have them be rumors or real life or news or whatever it may be. I still want to talk about it and get it out there in case it does come true. Because 2 hours of battery life, now, is it talking 2 hours of screen on time, or are we talking just 2 hours of battery life? If we're talking 2 hours of battery life, let's be honest, it's not going to add a whole bunch of time in the grand scheme of things in terms of real life usage, but it's still something, and I will take it. Now, the other one is something that a lot of people get turned off by before they even use the phone, is the crease in the phone. We saw the OnePlus phone. If you haven't seen the OnePlus Open, the crease is basically non-existent on there. And on the Pixel Fold, you can see it. And again, the Samsung Folds, it's gotten better throughout the years, but it's still very noticeable. Doesn't bother me at all. Bothers people that don't use the phone. That's really who it bothers the most. But Samsung seems to have a remedy for that. Again, the latest information coming from Crow is saying that the Galaxy Z Fold 6 is due to have basically a non-existent crease on there. Won't have many creases. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this happens, meaning basically 0 to a much reduced crease. It's happened on other phones. You got to imagine Samsung has figured out how to decrease the crease on the phone, on the main display, especially with the way that OnePlus Open has already done it. So you've got to admit that's probably going to happen. I can't imagine it won't. I'm really surprised if they don't greatly reduce or basically remove the crease at this point, being that it's in the 6th generation and other phones have basically removed it already as well. I saw this post on Reddit, the Galaxy Fold Reddit, and there was a guy talking about his experience since last summer of having a Galaxy Z Fold 5 and what he thinks overall about it. And there's mixed signals in there, at least in my eyes, because some of the things he feels strongly about, I don't, and then vice versa. So I wanted to talk about those things and kind of get a genuine feeling out there as to how things are going. So first of all, he says, I'm rocking the Fold 5 as my very first foldable. Here's my experience so far coming from a Note 20 Ultra. Battery easily holds up for a whole day. Wasn't expecting that. I don't agree with that. I've told you guys before that the battery life sucks on the Galaxy Z Fold 5. I've had all the folding phones and they've all had pretty much bad battery life, had to be charged multiple times throughout the day. I mean, unless the guy's rocking like 3 apps and that's it, that could be why. I do notice I get a lot of notifications. Notifications are always constantly working. That's gonna do it. Or if he has this in a light profile mode on his settings, or if he has this in a battery saving mode, sure, things like that will tone it down. I rock my display brightness. It's on auto brightness, but generally I have it at least half or higher. So, you know, at that point, there's obviously gonna be different for everybody, but I have to disagree with him big time. I can't imagine anyone getting a full day of battery life with the Galaxy Z Fold 5 unless you're really either not using it or you don't really have any apps on there for the most part. I'm completely used to the narrow front screen. Thought it might bother me. It does not at all. Again, I cannot get used to this. I'll use it in a pinch like I've mentioned. It's very uncomfortable to type on. It's not a fun device to use in terms of typing and using it overall. The keyboard is so small. It's okay to look at it real quick, oh, who's calling me, something like that, or answer the phone that way. Other than that, it's just not a good experience. I know some of you guys like it. I think the majority don't though. And I don't like watching videos on it. I don't like using social media on it. Only times I use it is, again, just to answer a quick phone call or check a quick notification, or sometimes if an app isn't working in the inside display, I will close it and make sure, and it always, 99.9% of the time it works on the smaller display, but otherwise, never. Nothing like a tablet experience when crashing on the couch and just browsing Reddit, social media, etc. I agree. Using the inside display anywhere and everywhere in comfortable situations in wherever you are, a public place, it's just awesome to have such a large display to look at a social media post like Instagram and have the picture be really big, unlike somebody else's photo on their phone. It might be really small. It's just a pleasurable experience. Completely agree. I love using it basically everywhere. The crease is invisible from my experience with dim light. It's not visible at all. I agree. You get used to it. I've said this for years. A lot of people will point out that you can see it. It bothers them. But at the end of the day, it has no bearing and no effect on your usage of the phone. And just like the notch on the iPhone, you're gonna get used to it and you'll forget about it before the end of the day and it won't bug you at all. So he's right with that. Don't think I will ever get a normal phone ever again. Completely agree. Of course, I do get normal phones, but my general usage of my main phone is always a folding phone. Last year, besides maybe using the S25 Ultra for a bit, it's always been a folding phone. The Pixel Fold, the OnePlus Fold, OnePlus Open, and then the Z Fold 5. Also the Z Fold 4, I guess I used for the beginning of last year. But ultimately, yeah, it's always a folding phone. I love them. They're so enjoyable to use. It's so hard. Once you fold, you can't unfold. Things he did not like. I feel like there are still apps that aren't optimized even though they look like it. Telegram crashes randomly, or the UI just completely misses the interface. Yeah, I guess I agree and I don't agree with that. So yeah, sometimes I'll be using an app, and I can't think of one to show you right now, but sometimes I'll be using an app and sometimes like the X to get out of it or something is too low. It's on the taskbar, or it's too high, or it's out of the way. Things like that. It is kind of stupid, but most of the time it's pretty rock solid. And like I said earlier, if the app is not working on my main screen, I will close it and use the outside display to make sure that it does. He feels like the OS or the apps have a lot more room to benefit from the extra space on the screen. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know. Yes and no. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I feel like a lot of the main apps that had issues, like Instagram and other apps like that didn't take full advantage of the display, now do. So I think they've gotten a lot better over the years, but obviously it's not perfect and I can't think of anything specific about it. His last comment was that he feels like it's lightning fast. Cameras are very good. Misses the 100X though. Very excited about the future. Looking forward to the 6. Lightning fast, I don't agree. It does hiccup a little bit in terms of some of the animation. Sometimes it does feel like it slows down, especially when I play with my S24 Ultra, the Pixel Fold, or my OnePlus Open. Cameras are very good. I have to agree to an extent. They definitely have gotten better towards the end of this first year of having this phone. They've improved. I remember when I think back, also the Fold 4 did the same thing. It came to a point where I was like, this is not too bad. I've noticed a lot of the photos I've been taking with this phone lately, I've actually been kind of impressed with, so I've got to agree with him on that. It misses the 100X though. I don't. This says 30X, and that's completely fine with me in terms of the zoom. So I don't miss the 100X. I barely ever used it, but it would be cool to have. And then excited about the future, looking forward to the 6. Same, I'm looking forward to the 6. I know it's not gonna be a huge change in terms of it physically looking, some slight changes, but I think it'll be enough, at least quote unquote enough, that when you actually hold it in hand, you're gonna feel some of those changes from the lighter weight, the bigger outside display. The Galaxy Z Fold 6 versus the Vivo X Fold 3. Now this is the Vivo X Fold 3 in real life next to a Fold 5. Now this phone has an 8-inch screen. The Fold 5 has a 7.6-inch display. But what is it going to look next to the Galaxy Z Fold 6? Because if you remember, the Z Fold 6 has a new aspect ratio in terms of it's going around the edges. It's going to be squared off. So it actually looks like a kind of, I wouldn't say mini, but a smaller version of the Vivo X Fold 3. The tweet from Ice Universe says the following. It says that since the two have similar external contours, I compared the internal screens of the Fold 6 and the X Fold 3. based on real data. Basically, Fold 6 is a scaled down version of the Fold 3 with a screen ratio of 8:7. Some other stuff to keep in mind with the Vivo X Fold 3 is it's not out in America. I don't even think it's international. It's just in China, if I'm not mistaken. So you can import it. It's pretty easy to import it from some import sites, and I'll link one down below if you want to buy it. But you know, this phone is just, you can see it does look like a lot bigger in some ways than the Fold 6. You can see 8.03 versus 7.6 on the Fold 6. The dimensions at the top, 142.7 versus 132.6, which is a whole 10 millimeters bigger. The height is 7.5 millimeters taller than the Fold 6, and then that aspect ratio, again, pretty close, 8:7.1 versus 8:6.9. And you have to have them in hand real life to really decide which one you would ultimately want. I do think that the Fold 6 looks better with the under display camera. Like when you just look at these, it looks better. That big dot on the top right of the Fold 3, I don't know, not my favorite thing to look at. And the camera is better than the Fold 6, so you're getting that, but at the expense of the way that it looks. I think at this point I'd probably be okay with it being underneath, unless they had on the top of the bezel like the Pixel did. But interesting to see Samsung taking some design language from the Vivo X Fold 3 with the squared off edges. Again, just a slightly smaller design, and it's weird too at the same time. You would think that when you think back to like controllers and stuff from the Xbox, I think it was the first Xbox? I think it was the first Xbox. They had this big giant controller for Americans, and then when they released it in Japan, they came out with a smaller controller, and then the smaller controller came out everywhere, whereas China has this big, massive, huge phone, and then Samsung's putting out not a tiny phone, don't get me wrong, it's not tiny at all, but a smaller phone. And you know, it must go into some thought of what people actually want and know what they want. You know, as much as I say I always want the bigger phone, and I want a bigger display on the outside and on the inside, and I want this and I want that, maybe at the end of the day, most people don't want that, and they're very satisfied with what we got. Not to say I'm not satisfied with the display of the inside for the Fold 6. I think it actually is a really great size, but at the same time, man, it'd be kind of cool walking away with 8 inches like the Fold 3 does. And then, you know, that Pixel 9 Pro Fold is also supposed to be about 8 inches. So, man, I've got to tell you something before the news even starts. Our water heater broke, and I just took the coldest shower of my life. It is, and I can't, and we have no hot water until Monday. So for 2 days, I'm gonna take crazy cold showers and be absolutely freezing. So I am just, it was a terrible experience. So for all of you that have water heaters, you're so lucky. And I have to get mine replaced again on Monday, and then I'll be good, but such a terrible experience. Anyways, to the news. We only got one story today, and I did want to tell you about it, all about the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We've heard that this phone could have 12 gigs of RAM or 16 gigs of RAM. They haven't had 16 gigs of RAM for a few years now, and it looks like they're gonna go back to that, potentially anyway, per this rumor, with that. So the latest information is that the S25 Ultra, if you get the 256 gig version, you'll have 12 gigs of RAM. But if you get the 512 or the 1 terabyte, it'll have 16 gigs of RAM with a 6.9-inch display across the board for all those versions. And that's been confirmed, quote unquote, in prototype 3. But I think a lot of people will end up getting the 512 with 16 gigs of RAM. Samsung usually gives you the free upgrade in storage, and I know a lot of people buy it when it comes out. So I think if you're gonna pre-order it, you'll end up with the 16 gigs of RAM, and if you don't, there's a high probability you're probably gonna get a better deal on the 256 or 12, and it's gonna be fine either way. You're probably not gonna notice a lot of things that are running better or faster, especially for the next couple of years. It's really going to be long term. If you're keeping this phone for 7 years or something like that, you're gonna want the 16 gigs of RAM. If you're gonna keep it for 5 years, I'd say get the 16 gigs of RAM. 12 has been the standard for years now, and that will change to 16 very soon, probably this year or next year, with a lot of Android phones. It's already starting to change, but I'm talking like really to the point it's just gonna be 16. It's probably gonna really start with this year's crop of phones, and then definitely by next year, 16 gigs. So definitely, if you pre-order the phone, I would say definitely get the 16 gigs, especially if you're gonna keep it for the long term. And then why not anyway? I mean, the phone might run better, keep more apps open, obviously, give you better performance, things like that. And you'd want that, especially with such a premium, kind of expensive phone when it comes down to it. And this will be a nice little boost to the morale of the S25 Ultra, especially if they don't change it a whole lot. Just knowing that they're throwing more RAM in is always a good thing, and just for the overall usage of the phone. So Galaxy Z Flip 6. We hear stuff about these phones all the time, good stuff, bad stuff, but this is definitely good news, at least per this rumor, and that is that the great news to hear is that these Flip 6 will come equipped most likely with the Snapdragon processor across the board, no matter where you live and no matter which version of the phone that you get, avoiding any critical issues seen in the Exynos 2400. Now, people that have the Exynos, some people I feel like most people that have it are like, it just doesn't live up to what you get on a Snapdragon. And obviously Snapdragon, the processor they're gonna put in there is gonna be so powerful. It should be the 8 Gen 3 if I'm not mistaken. And it's just gonna be, it's already in the S24 Ultra and the S24 phones in America. So it should be a great phone across the board in terms of its performance. Might be low on the RAM side, but the power with everything else is gonna be really great. Now, I used to play PUBG all the time on the Xbox years ago. I wish I could remember how many years ago it was. It was at least 5 years ago. It might be like 7 or 8, maybe almost 10 years ago. I used to play PUBG on my Xbox, and I had a lot of fun playing with my friends. But it's pretty popular on the phones now, probably more popular on phones than it is on console, and I don't know about PC. PC is probably really popular too as well, but they're putting a major update out for some Samsung phones with this game. So here's the information come out. Samsung Mod has released a post about the updated game optimization of not only PUBG, but also Genshin Impact. So PUBG, he's saying that they're gonna have 120 frames per second support coming to the S24 phones, S23 series, and the Fold 5, and they're gonna receive their priority first on that. Tencent will announce PUBG 3.2, which will support 120 frames per second tomorrow. This is awesome. So if you have those phones, you're gonna be able to get 120 frames per second. Genshin Impact 5.0, which is a very popular game across the world. New version is expected to release in 3 months. Highest spec phones will have a 37% resolution increase. Vulkan improvements are expected soon too. An internal S24 Ultra version is being tested internally. So some nice things coming to the gaming side for Samsung, and again, those big time games, PUBG, Genshin Impact, and some of their most powerful phones that they have on the market today. Now let's finish it up with some Galaxy S25 Ultra camera news. They got a really big amount of information on these and how they're going to kind of change direction a little bit with it. So this information has been tweeted out by the Mr. Sperandio for Tech. He's saying he's got some 25 Ultra camera news. A prototype of the S25 Ultra is already having its cameras tested by Samsung. There are 3 new aspects that I'd like to share with you firsthand about the new camera's models. It seems that Samsung is trying to be bold, which I think is necessary, I agree, since small adjustments won't make it catch up with the competition in terms of camera hardware. Whether I agree with the changes is another story, which I won't go into here. First, look at the details. This prototype no longer has 4 rear cameras, only 3. The ultra-wide, the main, and the periscopic. The week-old 3x zoom camera has finally met its end, as Samsung believes it can generate a 3x photo using the new main camera without loss or quality. The new main camera has the same sensor size and the same number of megapixels, but its ability to capture light will be improved, and the ultra-wide will not yet be subject to changes, at least not in this first prototype. The periscope camera has a large sensor and variable zoom, but with 2 fixed focal lengths. The first being 4 and 5x zoom, and the second being 6 and 7x zoom. So it won't be the same continuous variable zoom technology present in the Xperia 1V, for example. The ideal focal lengths start and end are still being tested. I'll keep you posted as soon as I have more news or test results. And as much as I've grown to appreciate Samsung cameras more and more year over year, it is, I mean, when people do, you know, side-by-side comparisons, you know, sometimes the Samsung falls short. Sometimes it comes out on top. Now, making some of these changes, hopefully they're obviously for the better. Will they be? I guess it remains to be seen, but it is something that, you know, you can't get to the top without making some changes. You can't just stay course and not really change anything year over year and not make changes. And it looks like Samsung kinda, in some of these lenses, in some of these technologies, is making a change. We'll wait and see how this turns out, but you know, as time goes on, we're gonna get more and more S25 Ultra camera news and stat specs and everything else with it. So what do you think? Do you think they need to improve the cameras a lot on the S25 Ultra? Let us know in the comments down below. Have a great day. We'll see you down the road. Peace!